Hey y'all, welcome back to the Corner Culture. My name is Kalen. I'm the host, owner, and operator of Corner Culture, and I am finally back. It's been a long hiatus for a very good reason, which is the reason for this video. I'm basically going to update everyone, and by everyone, of course, I mean no one, because nobody is watching this show right now. Maybe someday in the future, a bunch of y'all will be pining back through the old archives, checking out old stuff to learn about my story and my history, but I doubt that's going to happen. If it does, then great, but if not, keeping my expectations low so that I'm not disappointed. I'm just doing this because I want to do it and because I want to share with all y'all that may be interested, what few of you out there may be interested to learn about Bitcoin, maybe interested to learn about Bitcoin mining, maybe interested to learn about someone going from the left to the right, which I definitely did, and otherwise known as being red-pilled. This show is called Corner Culture because I had, in my transition out of leftism, realized the absolute important value of culture in society and in politics and in so many other things. Even Bitcoin, even monetary policy, for God's sake. So that's what I'm here to deliver to y'all. So first, I just want to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. So I moved from California to Georgia, and I'm here in my apartment in Georgia. Maybe I can get the auto thing to show you the background. No, I cannot. This is officially my second week. I'm not even halfway through my second week here in Georgia. Got my desk set up, doing my first video here in Georgia. All my other videos were in California. If you follow the channel, you would have known that I was in California and that I was pining to get out. Well, I finally got out. I got a job in Georgia. I'm a Bitcoin mining tech, and so this is my second Bitcoin mining tech job. My first one was with a contracting company that would fly me out to Texas, so I spent some time in Texas, and that was fantastic. And then, but it was contract, so it wasn't a regular steady type situation, and so I needed something regular. So here I am. I found a regular full-time paying Bitcoin mining tech position out in Georgia, and just finished my first week on the job. First 2 days of training, 3 days of hands-on training, we'll call it, and just absolutely loving it. So I got a bunch of stories over the last few weeks, a bunch of things I want to share with everybody, related to Bitcoin, not related to Bitcoin, a little bit of politics, a little bit of just random drama, just funny stories and interesting stuff. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But first, cheers to y'all for watching this video. I got my gin, which of course is my favorite. And so, cheers. In Spanish, salud. In Swedish, oh crap, I forgot Swedish. Russian is prost. Japanese is kompai. And what is Swedish? I forget Swedish. My Swedish friends are going to be very disappointed with me. Anyway, okay. So, first story. Back in 2019, my grandmother passed away. Bless her heart. Sweet lady. Won't get into that. There's a whole story there. Obviously, she was old. Ripe old age, like 93 or 96 or something. So she lived a long time. She had a great life, bless her heart. But nonetheless, I inherited her car from Salt Lake City, and it just so happened to be right at the time that I was relocating from LA to Boston, and I needed a car, and so I drove up to Salt Lake from LA with a friend. And then picked up the car, 1995 Ford Taurus, purple, or, maroon, I think is the official color, but really it looks raspberry. It's the color of raspberry. And picked it up, took it on the highway for the first time that day just to test it out. And the wheels had not been aligned. They were not weighted. Grandma was just putting around at like 20, 25, 35 miles an hour. Once we hit like 55, we didn't even dare go past 55, but once we hit 55, the thing was so violently shaking. We thought it was going to just fall apart. It was it was crazy. And like literally the interior paneling inside the doors is coming off from this experience. That's how violent the rattling was. And so we named her the Raspberry Rattler. So that's her name. So when you hear me say the Rattler, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about my car, my 95 Ford Taurus. Anyway, drove that thing all the way to Boston. I was in Boston for 3 years, which I talked about before. I was in Boston during COVID, which is what opened my eyes and Redpill the shit out of me. Then I drove her down to Tampa, dropped off my Ethereum mining rig. I was an Ethereum miner. That's how I got into crypto. And then I moved to Mexico for a year, and I did that whole thing in Mexico, which I think I talked about before also. It's another story for another time. Anyway, drove back from Dallas to LA, started the podcast, and so she was in LA for a little while, and up until recently. So I got this job in Georgia, and I needed to drive out there from LA. I need to have the car in Georgia. You know, there's not I'm out in the central Georgia. There's no Lyft, there's no Uber, let alone buses and trains or any kind of public transportation. It just simply doesn't exist. It's a very rural area, which I'm very grateful for. It's a constitutional carry state, so I got my guns too. That was one of the first things I did when I got here. So anyway, I had to drive out here. So before I took the trip, I got her serviced. One of the things that I absolutely had to do was get the air conditioner replaced. The air conditioner died in Boston, which I could handle. But if I was driving from LA to Georgia, you're basically going along the Mexican border for a good time through Arizona, New Mexico, and even Texas, you know, until you get through. It's like central Texas. So that was going to be like 14 or like 20 hours through that section of driving. There's no way I'm going to do that without AC. So I had to get the AC replaced, and I was willing to pay whatever it took. And long story short, I went with this one mechanic that said, yeah, I can get it done by this date. I had a date that I needed to leave. It was I think it was a Wednesday. I was like, I have to be out on Wednesday. So I need it done on Tuesday. And he was like, yeah, no problem. I'll get it done by then. So on Tuesday, I'm expecting to get the car by the end of the day. And he calls me up and he goes, hey, do you have a kill switch installed in this car? A kill switch? It's a 95 Ford Taurus. Why in the hell would I have a kill switch in this thing? Anyway, he goes, oh, don't worry about it. Okay, we'll figure it out. They didn't figure it out. He calls me up and says, hey, you know, I think it's the computer. I think it's the computer module. So we're gonna have to get that replaced. So tomorrow morning, you know, if you want to give me a call and let me know, I can get you prices on that. I'm like, the computer is fine. The car was starting just fine when I dropped it off. You guys did something to screw it up. You need to fix it. Anyway, so he was convinced it was the computer, and so I said, all right, well, I'm not gonna buy this part from you because I know you're gonna upcharge me a ton on the price of the unit. So I'll go find one myself. So I did. I confirmed with him that it was the right part. I drove to Pomona from Alhambra, which is like 45 minutes in LA traffic in the summer without an air conditioner. Picked up the part, drove it back to him, gave it to him, and I was like, is this the right part? Are you sure? And he was like, yep, that's right. So they plug it in and it still doesn't start. So I'm like, okay, so it wasn't the computer. It was something else that you guys screwed up. So a whole day gets burned. I'm supposed to be on the road on the way to Arizona to visit my mom, and she had just moved out there. And then it turns out, luckily, they did figure out what it was, and they screwed up the wiring. And so they fixed the wiring that they screwed up in the process of installing the air conditioner, and sent me on my way. And then I woke up in the morning the next day, which was the morning that I was supposed to be on the effing road at like 6 a.m. and be out of here, you know, with a 24-hour delay. And the left rear tire is all the way down to the ground. I mean, I was just like, this whole thing up to this point was just like, why does God hate me, you know? So luckily I had AAA, called AAA, and I said, yeah, like this thing is dead flat and needs some help. And so I slowly drove it out of the little parking area behind the apartment, which there's no way a truck was going to get back there. Slowly drove it out there. By the way, this car is fully packed with all my shit. So, you know, it's like the car is leveled like this, driving slowly. Like, it's just crazy. Got it out into the street, and I talked to the guy, and he said, you know, was it an immediate flat, or was it a gradual? I was like, it was gradual. And so he's like, well, why don't I just pump it up right now, and then you can just drive to the nearest mechanic, and they can get it sorted out. Okay, cool. Drive to the nearest mechanic, and I make it, and the tire's fine. So it was a slow leak. And then I get there, and they start checking stuff, and they find that it's the valve. It's just the valve. They dunk the tire in water to try and find the leak from by observing air bubbles. And when they rotated it and the valve went under the water, air was just coming out of the valve. So it was just a valve, and they were like, "Oh, we can replace that." And so that took like 2 minutes. The guy pulled the old valve out, threw it away, put a new valve in, and it was fine. And then I went to the lead of the mechanic, and I was like, "Hey, how much do I owe you? You really saved my ass here." And he shook my hand, and he just said, "Hey, have a safe drive to Georgia. No charge for you, my friend." I gave him a 5-star review on Google, and I hope it helps them, because they deserve it. They were fantastic and very helpful for me. And so I was able to get on the road early, still early-ish in the morning, later than I'd like, but it was still early in the morning, and I was with only a 1-day delay. So that was my Rattler story, which was insane. And then the whole drive to Arizona, I was absolutely nervous the whole time, just like constantly looking, changing my rearview mirror to look down at the tire, like, is it okay? Does it look fine? I can't tell. Like I would jiggle in the lane a little bit to see how it feel. Like, is the tire pressure getting low? Every time I'd gas up, I'd go to the air pump and check the pressure, and the pressure was fine, and I was like, okay. So it was absolutely nerve-wracking. But I finally got to Arizona without any problems, and the AC absolutely worked beautifully. The AC works so well I can't even run it on maximum, because it was too cold in the middle of the summer of the supposed climate crisis that we're facing. The air conditioner worked too well, and so that was a pleasant surprise. So I made it to Arizona. Visited my mom. She had just moved out there. She got a nice new place, which was very nice, very very like it's the kind of place my mother should be living in the whole time. Places that she had in California were just absolute garbage. At least the most recent ones. The first couple places she stayed at were fine, but the last few places were just terrible. So anyway. So that was the Rattler story. So the journey in total, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the journey in total. So I went from LA to Tucson, Arizona, and by way of Phoenix, because my grandmother is in Phoenix, so I stopped to visit my grandmother for a couple hours, hang out with her and talk with her, which is great. Love talking with my grandma. She's a fabulous lady. Did some IT troubleshooting for her. Got her Wi-Fi all sorted out. Got her printer network issues sorted out. So that was fun. Talked a little bit about Bitcoin. She's Bitcoin curious, I would say. So in telling her about the job I was doing in Georgia, that brought up Bitcoin, and we talked about that a little bit more. I actually orange pilled her the last time I hung out with her at the beginning of the year. So that was great. That was a lot of fun. But that drive was about 7 hours. So from LA to Phoenix was about 7 hours, and then it was an hour and a half from Phoenix to Tucson, just a short little drive. So I get into Tucson late in the evening. My mom and I go hang out, have dinner, have a few drinks, and had a good time. And then the next day, I spent the next day in Tucson with my mom, hung out with her and her friends, Tom and Sarah, who are I don't know where they're originally from. I know Tom is originally from Boston, and they were in California. That's how they met my mother. And then they are the ones that actually convinced her to move out to Arizona, which is where they're at now. So Anyway, had lunch with them, which was great. And there's another story tied in with the friends of my mother, Tom and Sarah, which I will later in this video. I'm going to give you a very detailed story, verbalization of the story. There you go. So after the day hanging out with my mom and her friends again. Next morning, I got up very early in the morning and drove to Dallas. Well, actually, just outside of Dallas. It's a small town called Cleburne. It's about 45 minutes southwest of Fort Worth. And I hung out with my aunt and uncle. That drive was 14 hours, nonstop. I ate in the car. I only stopped to gas and go to the bathroom. That's it. I drove the entire 14 hours in total. After gas stops and bathroom stops, it was about 15 and a half hours. So I left at 6 a.m. on the dot from Tucson, and I didn't get to my aunt and uncle's house until 11 p.m. Basically, showed up, had one quick drink, went to bed, and passed out, and it was great. And then hung out with them the next day, which was cool because they took me to a winery in Texas. I did not know wineries in Texas existed, and the one we went to was actually great. The wine was actually good. And it was a tiny thing. They only had 88 members, and their cap was 100. So we're talking small little winery out in the middle of nowhere. That was very cool. Hung out with them for a day. Next day, did the same thing again. Out the door at 6 a.m. on my way to Nashville, Tennessee to hang out with my friends Grant and Lila, who I love to death. So that was a 12-hour drive on the books, about 13 hours after stops and gas, which I did the same thing again, eating in the car, only stopping for gas and bathroom breaks. Stretched my legs a little bit. So I listened to a lot of audiobooks, listened to a lot of YouTube videos that I downloaded. And then the following day, hung out with Grant and Lila out in Nashville. And then this ties into some stories again I'm going to tell later, because the day that I hung out in Nashville, I went to Bitcoin Park. And if you don't know what Bitcoin Park is, it's basically a two-building complex, two small buildings right next to each other that used to be like music studios / living quarters for a band called Georgia Florida Line. And they sold the property to these two guys that bought it and said, we're going to turn this into a Bitcoin haven. And members pay an annual fee to have 24-hour access to this small complex, and utilize these facilities for anything they want to do, including podcasting, because it was a music studio. So there is a full-blown studio, and every room in the building is sound treated and perfectly acoustically treated, so that you can, and also you can plug into the main studio from any room. There's a panel on the wall. So all you got to do is set up a table, strap some mics onto the table, plug into the wall if you want to pipe into the master studio, for any kind of master processing, should you want to do that. So it's absolutely amazing. It's beautiful. It's new. It's freaking high quality construction, and it's just amazing. And then of course it's just filled with a bunch of Bitcoin people, anything from developers to just for example, the boss running the company that was hiring me to work out in Texas. He has a membership, and so he operates the business out of Bitcoin Park, which is super cool. And this was actually my third time visiting Bitcoin Park. Or no, I'm sorry. This was my second time visiting Bitcoin Park. The first time I ran into him by complete and total accident and happenstance. And then the second time I visited, I ran into him again by complete and total accident. Like literally, I wasn't even going to Bitcoin Park. I was just walking past it exactly at the same time that he was leaving it. And he was walking outside, and we literally ran into each other on the sidewalk. It was just like, man, I can't seem to come here without running into you. That was funny. But I did go and visit Bitcoin Park later for an event in the evening, and that's going to be another a topic for one of my stories later. So definitely check that out. So anyway, next morning, got up not too early and drove down to Georgia because it was only a 5-hour drive. And then I made it here, and here I am in Georgia in my apartment, which you can't see. But it's just a cute little 2-bedroom apartment, super affordable, and I'm really happy with it so far. A few little quirks and interesting construction nuances that I've had to deal with, but other than that, it's great, and I'm happy with it. Landlord's fantastic, and the little town of this little town is great too, and the people are great, so no complaints there. So that is the story of my journey. Cheers. All right, so let me go back to Nashville. When I was in Nashville, so in the early afternoon, I met up with a friend that I made from the deployments in Texas. And so he was also working under that same guy that I ran into twice at Bitcoin Park. And so when I was in Nashville, because he lives there, I hit him up and said, hey, man, I'm going to be there if you want to hang out. Let's go grab a beer. Let's go grab a burger or whatever. So we did. And so I was on my way to meet up with him when I ran into the owner of the company when I was passing by Bitcoin Park. So we met up and we had some drinks and we had some burgers and it was great. And then we both ran into that same guy that owns the company that had employed us both. And he said, hey, tonight there's a BitDevs meeting at 6 p.m. And before that, at 5 p.m., they're doing pizza. So you should come by and check it out. And it's open to the public. And we were like, oh, man, yeah, let's do that. Let's go do that. Let's check it out. So we did. 5 p.m., we showed up. We had some pizza. Met and talked to some people. In the first little group that I was chatting with, there was a guy that was clearly from London, England, United Kingdom, based on his accent. And also him complaining about his jet lag. That was very charismatic. And I didn't know who he was at the time. And then later, just by total coincidence and happenstance, I saw his face and his name listed as a speaker for a Bitcoin conference in somewhere in the Baltic area, I think. And so I was like, oh, I met that guy. That's cool. I didn't know who he was. And I was like in a conversation chatting with him, had no idea. And so he's like a prominent kind of speaker, voice, or think boy, if you will. I don't think that's what he is really, but some might call him that. And then later that evening, and so this is the cool part of the story, all right? So if you're tuning into the story, this is the part you want to listen to, okay? Went to the BitDevs meeting, and we're listening to all these people who are probably Bitcoin celebrities that I just don't know about because I'm not a programmer, coder, I've read a bunch of books and stuff, but I don't really know the faces to a lot of the names that I've read about. But during this meeting, they were, talking about developing Bitcoin and adding all these features to Bitcoin Core and everything else. And then a question about Sparrow came up. And if you've watched my channel, you know that I'm a huge Sparrow fan. Sparrow is absolutely the best Bitcoin desktop companion for any hardware devices that you have out there. It's absolutely the best wallet management system. It's just the best. And the way, not only the way it looks, but the way it functions, how smooth it is, how secure it is. Just like everything is so perfect about this app. And so I had actually watched a video of one of the developers of this app, Sparrow, giving a presentation at the last Bitcoin conference. I think in Miami, not Amsterdam, but I think it was in Miami. And he's a British guy, or at least I think he is, based on his accent. Guy's name is Craig Raw, and I watched this video of him just kind of glossing over a lot of the features of Sparrow, and I learned a lot from that because there were tons of things in there I didn't know, and so thanks to that video, I learned a ton of stuff, and then I've made videos. So I learned how to use these things, and then I made videos myself showing my followers how to implement Sparrow and the JADE BLOCKSTREAM hardware wallet into their lives. and become financially and monetarily sovereign. So in the meeting, a question of Sparrow came up, and then there was this guy that was sitting on across the room from me, and when the question of Sparrow came up, everybody kind of looked at him, and then he kind of like piped in and threw in his 2 cents about the question or the issue or whatever it was. I don't remember what it was exactly. It just involved Sparrow in some way. And then when I heard him talk and I saw his face, I was like, oh, I recognize this guy. And so I had to look that video up on my phone because I didn't remember any of the details. But I had a suspicion. I was like, wait, was that the guy that gave the video at the Bitcoin Miami conference about Sparrow? Is he a developer for Sparrow? I look it up. Sure enough, it is. Like, it is his face, and like, very, very specific face. And I was like, oh, that's definitely him. And then I see his name in the title. I was like, oh, that's Craig Raw. That's his name. Okay, cool. And I was like, man, I got to, when this thing is over, I got to go at least just shake his hand to say thank you for making this app or helping make this app. And so I did. I waited for a moment that he wasn't, being hounded by anybody else. And I just tapped him on the shoulder and I just said, hey, man, are you a developer for Sparrow? And he goes, I'm the only developer for Sparrow. And at that moment, that was too huge for me to process. So I just let it slide, and I was like, I just reached out and shook his hand, and I was kind of speechless. This is like my Bitcoin celebrity moment, my first Bitcoin celebrity moment. And I was like, dude, thank you so much for that app. It's absolutely fantastic. I probably said a lot less words than that because I was just kind of like in shock of all the things that were happening in my head at that time. And I was probably awkward as shit. But anyway, I just shook his hand. I said, thank you so much. And then I walked away. I actually had to leave because my ride home with my friends were imminently on the way, and so I was like, I kind of have to go. Otherwise, I would have loved to have stayed and chat with him. But later, I was thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, he's the only developer? Craig Raw is the only developer of this app. This app is one of the most powerful. It is the most powerful software tool that is out there. You can plug in basically any piece of hardware, Bitcoin hardware, onto this thing and use it as a companion. And that includes Ledger and Trezor and Jades and cold wallets I might be getting the name wrong on that. And a multitude of other ones that I don't even know about. I haven't even had the time nor the money to go through and explore them. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is one guy that's doing all this. And it's absolutely incredible what he's accomplished. And not only does it function well, and it's intuitive in its user interface, it also looks great. It looks fantastic, and it operates smoothly. And so my mind was just blown. Like, one person did this, that's amazing. And it also, to me, meant a lot in terms of the fact that, given what it provides, given what Sparrow allows you to do, if you have one or two using multi-sig, 2 hardware devices, given what it allows you to do in terms of just empowering people, empowering humanity. One person is able to do this and affect this kind of change on top of Bitcoin, because of and thanks to Bitcoin. It just blew my mind. And I spent the whole next few days just like, just constantly thinking this over, like how amazing that is. And then actually just today I found out that Stacker News put me in their Saturday newsletter, a post that I put in there basically telling this exact story and in lesser words. So that whole story to me was very fun and interesting. And it was my first celebrity Bitcoin moment, or Bitcoin celebrity moment. And I couldn't be more grateful to Bitcoin Park and Craig Raw, Joe Angelo, and Angelo, Guardrail, and my buddy Marcus, and my friends Grant and Lila for hosting me over there in Nashville. Or without any of them and without any of that, I would not have been able to have that whole experience. So I'm just really grateful to all these things so coalesced into one entity, and in this like a blossoming flower. This beautiful thing happened. So very, very grateful and appreciative to that. So that is my Bitcoin Park story along my journey to Georgia. Cheers. To my Swedish friends, skål. Skål. I didn't forget, it was just delayed. Okay, so my next story that I want to talk about is a job in Georgia. So like I said before, I was doing contract work, doing some Bitcoin mining out in Texas. And I couldn't be more grateful. I could not be more grateful for that experience. It was incredible. They were kind enough to fly me out there because I was trapped in LA, and fly me out there, put me up in hotels, drive me out to the site so that I could work my ass off as hard as I could. And I got increasingly based as fuck out there, like eating steak and broccoli every night, not drinking, except for the occasional, Friday night or something. And, doing push-ups in the morning. I got up to I am up to about 200 push-ups every morning, although it doesn't show for some reason. I guess I'm not eating enough steak. And working with the people out there was so great. They're just great people. I made tons of friends out there, like the one I mentioned in the previous story about Bitcoin Park. All these great people I met that are all, and not all of them, but most of them are they're Bitcoiners. They're in this because they believe in it, and they want to participate, and they want to live for something greater than themselves. And it's just so admirable, and it's valiant in a way without sounding hyperbolic, but it really kind of is. We in our minds believe, if you're not a Bitcoiner, if you're not a maxi, or if you don't know anything about Bitcoin, Bitcoiners really do believe that they are saving humanity from the destructive, life-ending dangers of fiat. And so just being around a bunch of people that kind of think the same way, feel the same way, and are dedicating their lives for the same cause was just so great. It was just so great. So many great conversations, so many great learning experiences. And then on top of that, actually learning how to mine Bitcoin, or how it's kind of being done right now in the industry, learning how companies are, basically taking venture capital and either hosting or prop mining, which is otherwise known as proprietary mining. So proprietary mining means that the company that owns the site and owns the miners and employs the techs is the one that's earning the Bitcoin. They are the ones mining the Bitcoin and therefore generating income. If you're host mining, what you're doing is you're setting up the site. Maybe you're employing the mining techs, but somebody else owns the miners, and they're paying a rental fee or a shelf fee or an energy fee to put their miner on your shelf, utilize your facility, and mine Bitcoin. So if you're a host miner, you're not making Bitcoin. You're not earning Bitcoin. You're earning fiat that's being paid to you by somebody. Oh, maybe you're getting paid in Bitcoin. I don't know. Probably not. You're probably getting paid in fiat by some hosting company or some hosting individuals that are putting their miners on your shelf and paying you for it. Or you're a company that does a little of both, maybe. Or you're a company that's hosting for another host. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that is true. So you could own a facility, you have cheap renewable power, and you have a facility, you have the mining techs, you're paying for all that. And then a company hires you to buy out an allotment of space, like several buildings, several MDCs as we call them, modular data centers, modular data containments. I forget the exact. Anyway, several buildings, each of which can hold hundreds of miners. They will hire. So the company will come in and say, give me, give me 16 of those, which is thousands of miners at that point, and then we are gonna host those to customers, and then one customer could buy one, or in the case of some companies, up to 10, and any more than that, call us for enterprise details, enterprise deals and agreements. So yeah, so that was one of the big learning things for me, was that there's just a multitude of different ways that, as far as a business model is concerned, that this can be arranged in terms of Bitcoin mining. And one of the great things about it is that it's really beefing up the renewable power infrastructure in these states. So in Texas, they have ERCOT, which is an independent energy grid that does not rely on any other state to provide power to it. It is the only one in the United States like this, which is both a blessing and a curse. The curse being what we learned given February of 2022, when the great ice storm in Texas came through and all the wind turbines shut down, and everybody was without power, and people died and stuff, So that's kind of the downfall. But the benefit is it's fully independent power. It is not dependent on anybody else for power. If California went down, if Florida went down, if Oklahoma, Kansas, and the rest of the country went down in terms of power, Texas would be fine, presuming that the reason they all went down didn't cause Texas to go down also, like, I don't know, nuclear bombs or something. So it has a benefit. And then additionally, they have more control. They have complete and total state power, obviously, over the energy grid, so they can deploy they can deploy tax revenue into building out infrastructure. They can deploy private capital into building out infrastructure. So there's a lot of advantages as well. And then Bitcoin mining comes in and basically equilibrates and stabilizes the prices and says, like, hey, if you got a bunch of excess power that you're not using, we'll get that. We'll take that for cheap, so you don't have to just burn it off for nothing and waste that power and lose all that resource. We'll take it at a discount and we'll use it. And then whenever you need it, we'll shut down our miners so that you can sell it out to the private market. So that helps keep the prices stable. So it's a really great thing. But anyway, okay, I went off on a tangent. I got all this great experience in Texas, and needed something more full-time and regular. So I started looking out there, found this job in Texas with a company that has, out in Georgia, for a company out in Georgia that has a ton of different sites all over the place in Georgia. Then they even have sites in, they only have sites in Georgia. I was confused for a moment because they have a site in Georgia called Washington. That is Washington City. And then also they have a site in another city of the county Washington, Georgia. And so I always get confused, and I'm thinking Washington, the state Washington. They don't have any sites in Washington. They're only strictly 100% in Georgia. Apparently Georgia has a great deal of cheap power, and I can confirm that as someone who just signed up for power here for an apartment in Georgia and I'm getting 6.6 cents per kilowatt hour, which is less than half of what I was paying in California. Let me say that again. My power rate per kilowatt hour is less than half of what I was paying in California. That's right. And again, out here in Georgia, just like Texas, it's not an independent grid, but it is massively renewable. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I know that there is a lot of renewable energy out here, including nuclear. And so that's one of the things that's really helping drive down the prices. So anyway, so this company out here in Georgia is buying up a ton of different mining enterprises that have found themselves to be in financial trouble. And so they swoop in and they buy them up, and then they are basically just kind of conglomerating and taking over these sites and saying, you know what, we'll buy this off your hands, and we will employ the people there, and under our umbrella, and we will ensure that things are being done right, being done properly, make sure they got health benefits, which I finally have again, thank God, and fuck healthcare in the United States. Fuck healthcare in the United States, but because this is the only option that they give us, there is no fucking other option out there. So fuck your fucking limited options in healthcare. That's for another video, though. But I finally have healthcare again because that's the only way to go, apparently. and it comes out of my paycheck also. So I pay taxes on it, and it comes out of my paycheck. Cool, great, awesome. Anyway, I'll shut up. I swear. And things are done in a very clean and clear and documented way, which was a little different than Texas. The situation in Texas was a little fucking gator done, which was great. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, and there was nothing wrong with it. There was nothing dangerous or bad with it. It was all fine and good. But it was a little bit like, we gotta go now. Like, it was a much more sense of urgency, because it was a deployment site where they were basically getting miners off the trucks to coming in brand new or used, but had to get up on the shelf and get going right away. Whereas this is a site that's already up and running. Many sites that are already up and running. So the name of the game there is really uptime, keep everything up and running. Swapping, so you gotta replace old miners with new miners, or you gotta replace dying miners with ones that are alive. Just uptime and keeping everything online, keeping the hash rate up, all that kind of good stuff. So it's a very different situation to begin with, but looks like we at this new job, we're gonna be in deployment again very soon. They are building, they are expanding as we speak at this site that I'm working at. So thank God for my deployment experience, because that's going to be a huge part of the job coming up here very soon. I don't want to say numbers, because I don't know what would be appropriate or not to just, yeah. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be an F ton of miners. It's going to be an F ton of megawatts expanding out here in Georgia, and I'm here for it. I'm so excited. This company is great. The people I work with are absolutely fantastic. And again, and this segues into the next story, and I'm calling this segment Bitcoin Stories from the view of a full-blown Bitcoin maxi. So in this whole process of working in Texas and working in Georgia for Bitcoin mining companies, it's been an interesting blend of people. Like I said before, predominantly you have a lot of people that are Bitcoin miners, Bitcoin maxis, that just, this is the future, this is what's going to save humanity, and then they're all in on it. And then you have some people that are not. They're just like, I just fell into this because of happenstance, or this connection here, or this skill set that I have here, and that was marketable. And so here I am. I know a little bit about Bitcoin, or maybe I don't know nothing about Bitcoin. I don't know shit. I don't understand Bitcoin at all. There's some of that too. And so because of that, there have been some very interesting experiences for someone like me who is here for the Bitcoin, working with somebody who's got a great, is a good person, and I'm not talking down about anybody whatsoever, one iota, so please don't misunderstand me. But working for somebody who kind of just either doesn't care or doesn't really know all that much, or only knows a little bit about Bitcoin, but they're working in Bitcoin. They have a job. They are getting a paycheck and feeding their family because of Bitcoin, and they're still kind of like, I don't really understand what's going on with Bitcoin. So story number one is a great friend. I'm going to call him a friend, even though we've only worked together for a week. We've had a lot of conversations because we're very much on the same level. He and I feel we're we're similar age, similar maturity level, similar life experience. We both traveled a lot, and so it's been an interesting time talking to him, because I feel like when I'm talking to him, I'm talking to myself only just a short 1 or 2 years ago, back when I was mining Ethereum, or I was still sort of Ethereum friendly, Polygon friendly. I like the features of smart contracts. I think that's really important, and we should do that. I'm not that way anymore at all. And now I'm full blown Bitcoin only. No, I don't want smart contracts. They don't make any sense. We can do, you can do that in a centralized fashion. That's fine. One of the things that came up that I found was very interesting for somebody who is actually very well versed in crypto and Bitcoin, understands in at least to some degree, certainly much more than most, what mining is and how it works and what it is and what it does, how crypto works and what it is and what it does. Said to me that it came up in a conversation basically that hash rate is related to price for a proof of work coin, and I immediately was like, no. Hash rate is not related to price in any way, shape, or form. I know there's some other YouTubers out there, mining YouTubers out there, who have the same belief, and I've also heard this on Twitter a lot from some other crypto people who say that hash rate is related to price, and it absolutely is not. My economics training has taught me that price is determined by one thing and one thing only, which can be broken down into two things, and that is supply and demand. That is it. There's nothing else that is going to determine price of any commodity, any asset in the world other than supply and demand. Now, I kind of acquiesced a little bit in this discussion because I said hash rate doesn't affect the price directly, but maybe it does indirectly. Like I will concede that hash rate affects price indirectly, and that is in the way that it could affect demand. Maybe it could affect demand. And then I thought about it further after I said it, and I was like, no, it doesn't. I have been in this space for 3 years now. I have not ever seen a single person or talked to a single person or read a single thread or read a single tweet that was like, Bitcoin hash rate's going up, therefore I'm going to buy some because that means the price is going up. There is no correlation at all between hash rate and price. None at all. And if you don't believe me or if you want evidence, just take two charts. Take the price chart and take the hash rate chart. The hash rate chart just goes like this, just goes, you know, if you zoom out far enough. And if you zoom out the same distance, the same timeline distance on the price, you know, it goes like this, like, you know, and even if you turn it into a log, it goes like this. It kind of has more of an arc like this as opposed to this. So they are not correlated just by looking at those two charts side by side. And then I thought about it later more, and I was like, there's another piece of evidence, if you don't believe me, that hash rate has nothing to do with price. Ethereum. I stayed awake on September 15, 2022 during the merge, and in which my rig was basically getting kicked offline and saying like, nope, you can't mine Ethereum anymore. What happened to the price of Ethereum during that time? Nothing. Absolutely zero effect on the price at all. And then we're not talking about like, oh, the hash rate changed. We're talking, no, they completely changed their consensus algorithm altogether. They went from hashing an absolute ton of hashes scattered across GPUs all over the world to zero. And the price didn't do anything. It didn't go up and it didn't go down any more so than the grander total crypto market put together. It is all about supply and demand. It is about how much a buyer is willing to pay for a product and how much a seller is willing to get for that product. That's it. That is the only thing that determines price for anything in the fucking world, period, end of story. Again, I will concede that hash rate or consensus algorithm might maybe affect psychological buyer demand, but look at Bitcoin. First of all, the hash rate and the price are not correlated at all. And then second of all, look at Ethereum. They changed their consensus algorithm, and even that didn't affect the buyer psychology or the seller psychology of Ethereum. The price didn't budge at all. It just it just crabbed along for the next few weeks, just like Bitcoin did back then in late 2022. So hash rate has absolutely nothing to do with price. What a hash rate has to do with is how competitive is it to earn Bitcoin without buying it? How competitive is it to get newly minted Bitcoin in your wallet for the cost of electricity and the cost of equipment? And if you're a big multi-million dollar company, the cost of employment, the cost of skills and labor. That's it. That's what hash rate is about. How much are you willing to deploy in terms of capital in order to earn this thing? Because how much do you believe that this is going to become valuable in the future? Okay, this is just like gold. This is literally digital gold. How much capital are you willing to deploy to dig into the fucking ground and find gold and pull it out and refine it and clean it and smelt it down and sell it on the market? That's what determines the price. Not the hash rate. Not the fucking hash rate. So, and then of course, and not just that determines the price. That plus obviously all the buyers on the market who want to own it, want to possess it, want to hold it, or companies like MicroStrategy and others that want to add it to their balance sheets, and soon hopefully we'll see spot ETFs, spot Bitcoin ETFs with the likes of BlackRock and Fidelity and many others. So but anyway, my whole point is it's all about supply and demand. That's what determines price. Hash rate has nothing to do with it. The one thing that hash rate absolutely has to do with is security. The higher the hash rate, the higher the security. The higher the hash rate, the more absolutely implausible it is that anyone, any nation state, or any alien fucking technology can hack Bitcoin, can take it over, can steal it, can change the code and all the rest. That's what hash rate has to do. Okay, so that's my first Bitcoin story. That's my first story from Bitcoin Stories from the view of a full-blown maxi. Here's the second video, or the second story. So the second story is this. There was another individual that I spoke with when we got into we were just sitting around like after lunch or something having a talk, and we were talking about Bitcoin. I can't remember how it came up, but this particular individual that's working, he's a mining operation tech along with all the rest of us, has zero knowledge of Bitcoin, zero understanding of what Bitcoin is, yet it's feeding his family. So me personally, if I'm going to get a job in something, I'm going to know about it. I'm going to look it up. Like for this company I'm working for, before I accept the job, I gave them a background check in my own way. Like I absolutely researched them to the end of the earth as much as I could to make sure that if I'm going to move my ass all the way out to Georgia, it better be goddamn worth it. And I was convinced that it was worth it. And so far, I'm still convinced that I made the right choice. So anyway, this individual has absolutely no knowledge about Bitcoin. And he said so himself. He admitted. He's like, I ain't got no idea about Bitcoin. And you know what? That's fine. I'm not judging him for it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just interesting from my point of view hearing somebody say that. And in this particular conversation, what was brought up was he said that he didn't understand how you could buy less than one Bitcoin. So in other words, he did not understand that Bitcoin is divisible. And I immediately said, well, dollars are divisible. Dollars are divisible by 100. You know, 1 penny is 1/100th of a dollar. And so how do you not understand this? And I feel like some people, and I've observed this in other things in my life, particularly with math and science, where the moment the subject is brought up, they just shut down. And it's not that they're not intelligent. It's not that they're incapable. It's that they have been programmed or sort of conditioned, or they have just convinced themselves that I cannot think about these things. And it was like, man, you mean to tell me you don't understand how a pizza is divided? There's one, okay, look, bro, there's one pizza. You cut it in half, it's a half a pizza. You cut both those in half again, and now you got a quarter of a pizza. You know what I mean? Like, and you cut those in half, now you got an eighth. Like, just, how hard is this? Now just do it by factors of 10. It's not hard. This is not hard to understand. This is very easy to understand. You just have to be willing to put in the effort and put in the, and you have to be willing to put in the study. Like, that I'm not going to deny that I didn't come to Bitcoin and understand it fully right out the gate either. You know what I mean? But you do have to be willing to put in a little energy, put in a little, a little heart and soul into it, and just say like, okay, I need to figure this out, and I'm gonna deploy some of my own time and energy into trying to learn what this is and figure it out. There have been so many epiphanies for me where it was like, oh, it's actually really simple. I was convincing myself that it was more complicated than it really is. For example, the divisibility of Bitcoin. I remember the first time that I saw, less than one Bitcoin, like either being purchased or, just displayed in some kind of way in which the decimals went out like 9 digits or 8 digits. And I remember going like, I don't get it. What is this? This is confusing. But if I'd have just stopped it for a moment and just gone, okay, wait a minute. Well, first I need to answer some rudimental questions. Number one, how far does it go? Right now, Bitcoin is only divisible by 100 million. So that is 8 digits to the right of the decimal point. So the 1 of the 100 million is to the left of the decimal, and then the 8 remaining digits are to the right. That right there, if you're listening to this and you don't understand the divisibility of Bitcoin, that right there should blow your mind. Just think about that for a second. Just take the number 100 million. Just 100 million. Okay? Now put a decimal to the right of the first 1, or the only 1. Okay, 1 period 0 0 0 0 0 0 0. That's 1 Bitcoin. So now you have, if you just understand that fundamentally just from the start, now you have the framework. Now you have everything you need to know about the divisibility of Bitcoin. So one of the smallest divisions of Bitcoin is called a Satoshi. That is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So that is 0.000000001 Bitcoin. That's 1 Satoshi, or for short, we call it a sat. And by the way, today is Saturday, which is great. Today is Saturday, Saturday. And I'm teaching you all about sats if you don't know about it. So, think of a sat like $1. Or if you want, you could think of it like a penny. Or you could think of it like a penny if a penny was 1/100 millionth of a dollar. Right? You could think of it that way. So, 100 sats is like $100. 100,000 sats is like $100,000. Now, in terms of price, right now at the making this video, September 23rd, no, that's not the case. 100,000 sats is like, I don't know, $3 or $2.70 or something. But in the future, there's going to come a point when a sat is basically like $1. In other words, all your unit of account for all goods and services, when you price them in your head to try and determine value in terms of a commodity, a currency, you're going to think about it in sats instead of dollars. So it'll be like a haircut is 100 sats. But as time goes on, haircut's going to be 50 sats. And then when time goes on even more, haircut's going to be 11 sats. It's going to continue to go down and down and down because Bitcoin is deflationary. So you are incentivized to save money, and you are incentivized to be more competitive on the market for supplying goods and services. So companies and corporations can't just sell you garbage and junk because the buyer, the consumer, is more incentivized to save and hold because the currency is going to become more valuable over time. So they're only going to spend and buy things when they absolutely have to. So, junk food, gone. You better give me some high quality food or I ain't going to waste my sats on this. Automobiles? You selling me junk automobile? Hell no. Nope, that ain't going to happen. You selling me a house? You mean this 1 bedroom box in the sky is $1 million? No. I'll just hold my Bitcoin until you come up with something better, et cetera, et cetera. So the deflationary aspect is going to really change a lot of things. But you have to start thinking about it in terms of sats. You have to start thinking about it in terms of a Bitcoin. Think of it like this. Here's another analogy that I think is really great. What do we call a $100 bill? A Benji. Okay, that's a name. We gave it a name because of Benjamin Franklin's faces on the bill. We call it a Benji. What's a Benji in terms of dollars? It's $100. Okay, well, how many cents are in a dollar? 100. Okay, so a Benji is 100 pennies, cents. Let me say it again. A Benjamin is 100 cents. Okay? If I say that to somebody like this individual I was talking to, they'd be like, oh, yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Benjamin's $100 and a dollar is 100 cents. Durr. Okay, well, just start thinking about Bitcoin in those terms. Okay? A Bitcoin is 100 million sats. Okay? One Bitcoin is a Benji Bitcoin. And a sat is 100 million of those. Or a Bitcoin is 100 million sats. A sat is just 100 million of a Bitcoin. End of story. And by the way, there are actually names for denominations of sats all the way up to 100 million. I don't remember all of them, but there's like a God, what are they? I can't remember off the top of my head, like bits and you can look it up. Look it up. There are actually named denominations like 1,000 sats and like 100,000 sats and then like 1,000,000 sats. They have their own names. So so that's like pennies, dimes, quarters, dollars, Benjis, blah blah blah. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Just start thinking about it in those kind of terms, and you'll understand it a lot better. So anyway, that's been an interesting experience. Another story from the Bitcoin stories from the perspective of a full-blown maxi. That was story number 2. And now on to story number 3. So story number 3, this is not Bitcoin related at all, although it did happen, has everything to do with what I mentioned earlier when I was visiting my mother and went out to lunch with a couple of her friends, Tom and Sarah. So we met up at their house, Tom and Sarah's house, first before going out to lunch, and we were catching up. I hadn't seen Tom and Sarah in like 10 years, 9 years, something like that. And so we were catching up, and I was telling them, yeah, I am on my way, stopping by to Georgia. And the moment I said I am moving to Georgia, Sarah went like this. Georgia. Oh, Georgia. Oh. Tom and Sarah are hyper-liberals. Leftists, maybe. I don't know their exact positions on everything, but they are full-blown leftists. Probably. They are definitely hyper-liberals at the very least. And so immediately they were super Sarah was judgmental and bigoted with regard to Georgia. Oh, Georgia. Oh, Georgia. And so that stuck with me on my way out to Georgia. I was like, that's kind of shit. What's wrong with you? There's I don't know, however many million people in Georgia. A lot, and certainly a lot of them are black. And you're like, this to Georgia? Like, what's wrong with you? Anyway, so that happened. And then I get to Georgia. First of all, everybody out here, black, white, brown, whatever, are all super friendly so far. I have not run into anybody that was not incredibly friendly, and that's a part of the Southern culture. They call it Southern hospitality, and I have definitely experienced this. I've definitely firsthand noticed this. People say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and they're very friendly, and, can I help you? How you doing? More than happy to make a little small talk with you, in line or, with the cashier, and just, it's super friendly. Everything it's such a stark contrast from LA, which is a blue liberal hellhole where nobody gives a shit about anybody else at all. If you're pulled over on the road with car troubles, nobody's stopping to help you. But I've witnessed several times people stopping to help others on the road or elsewhere, out here in just the 1.5 weeks that I've been here. So, and then I had another experience that really really made me think. So there's a group chat with the company that I'm working for out here, and it's specific just to the site that we're at, and it's all the employees on this chat from the site specifically. And over the weekend, they were chatting about next week's cookout, which I'm super excited for. My first cookout with the company, to go hang out with everybody and eat some good food, and and have some good conversation and hang out and get to know everybody. Super excited about that. And in the chat, they were saying like, well, you better get the smoker ready. So, hey, so-and-so, you better clean out the smoker this week at some point so that we can do the cookout. And I chimed in and I put in the wide eye emoji, and I was like, oh, super excited for that. Somebody else chimed in and said, hey, yeah, so-and-so can bring a whole cow and we can butcher that and serve it up for everybody. Well, one of the employees I met there, his name is Yash, which is short for Yashish. He is Indian. He is from India, and he is Hindu. And Hindus don't, they find the cow a sacred animal, and they don't eat cow. They don't eat beef. And so he chimed in and said, I won't be eating any beef, and or something to that effect. And I remember thinking like, oh no, like my California instinct kicked in, and I was like, oh, this is an HR moment. Somebody's going to be offended on behalf of Yash, even though Yash wasn't really all that offended. He was just saying like, I'm not going to be eating any cow. And he even had like a little laugh, a little smile emoji or a laugh emoji or whatever. So he was intending just to say like, I'm Hindu, so I'm not gonna eat any cow. If this was in California, that would be an HR moment. That would be somebody being offended on behalf of Yash, like, oh, so and so bringing up butchering a cow is offensive and intolerant and uninclusive for those who have a different culture or religion or whatever. But what ended up happening was immediately after that, somebody else chimed in and said, "Don't worry, Yash. I'll bring in one of my chickens, and we'll butcher up the chicken just for you." And I'm thinking, and so like when that happened, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the supposed like bigoted, intolerant place, when one of the most inclusive things I've ever witnessed occurred in a group chat." Somebody was like, don't worry, Mr. Man from India who finds cows sacred according to your religion and your culture. We got you covered. Me personally, will bring in one of my chickens from my farm, which, by the way, is super badass in and of itself, just for you. I'll bring in a chicken just for you so that you can still join in and participate and be fully included with the sanctity of eating a freshly butchered animal with the rest of us. I can't think of anything that is more inclusive and tolerant than that. And I experienced it here in Georgia, not in California. Like I said, in California, this would have been an event. This would have been a drama moment for the company. It would have turned into something that it shouldn't have been. But here it was a moment where somebody, and well, everybody really, and everybody's on board. Everyone's like, yeah, absolutely, got you covered. We're gonna make sure that you're cool and you're okay, and that you feel like a part of the gang, just like the rest of us. And that happened in Georgia. And this is just another one of those things for somebody who's been red-pilled, like myself, realizing that it is the left who are the intolerant bigots. They are the ones who are the judgmental assholes, who do not, for one moment, come in good faith to the conversation when it is politically relevant in any way, shape, or form, culturally relevant in any way, shape, or form. They are not the ones looking for a solution. They're the ones looking for a problem. They're the ones looking for a complaint to be made and a problem to be created, and it's driven by their ideology. It's driven by what they think is supposed to be the archetype of their opponents, political opponents on the right. Georgia being a predominantly red state, at least certainly where I'm at, and just opened my eyes. Again, it's another one of those moments where I realized I was on the wrong side my whole life. I was a liberal, a leftist, and even a progressive, and for a short moment, even a socialist. Dead wrong. Dead wrong. They've been lied to. The leftists have been lied to. The liberals have been lied to. They believe everything that they're told by media sources that are completely and totally encaptured by leftist liberal statists and tyrannical authoritarians, to believe a certain way, to push a certain ideology, so that it fits the narrative and it allows for them to push their policy agendas, which is more money, more control, and more power for the state. And once I was red pilled, I could see that clearly, and then coming here to Georgia, I could see that the opposite is actually true. They are the most intolerant. They are the most tolerant people. They are the most inclusive people. And it makes sense given a lot of their religious upbringings, their religious values. Is to be inclusive, and it is to be polite, and it is to be, kind to other people and non-judgmental and all that stuff. Not that everybody's perfect. Obviously there are people who have emotional issues, maturity issues, whatever it is. But at least for those that are on the right, generally brought up under religious values, are taught to be inclusive. They are taught to be accepting and tolerant. But the left has created the god of science as their moral compass, which has essentially allowed them to completely disassociate half of the country from the status of being human beings, from the status of being eligible for respect and good faith. So it is the left who are the intolerant assholes. It is the left who are the bigots, and in a lot of cases they're the racists. They are the true racists of this country. Believing that blacks are incapable of getting an ID, or incapable of getting lawyers, or incapable of free thought, and incapable or unable to vote for whoever they think is the better candidate to represent their values and represent their future and their lives or their voice or whatever it is. So anyway, that is my final story from Bitcoin Stories from the View of Bitcoin Maxi. Also, it's my final story for this video, this long-winded video that has been running for a long time. Much too long for anybody to actually sit through and watch it, listen to it, from a fucking nobody like me. Who the hell is this guy that I'm listening to? So anyway, that's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kalen. I'm the owner and host of Corner Culture. Again, if you like any of this artwork in the background I got going on, check out my store, COSATOSHI.shop, and pick up some stuff on there. I got really high quality stuff on there, and it's dirt cheap. I'm not making any money on it right now at all. I'm just doing it so I can get the product out there into the wilderness, and hopefully it'll start some conversations about Bitcoin for some people, and then maybe I can get some data on which designs people like and which designs they think conveys that message, and then from there, I can at least start cutting down my inventory into what I know works. So please go on there and buy something, or go on there and just look around and tell me what you think is good and what you think is bad. I would even appreciate just that feedback, even if you don't buy anything. That'd be great. So anyway, I'm Kalen with Corner Culture. Peace out. Hope you all have a good evening.